Gonna be live in a second. Yay, we're live. Hey, everybody. It is Dr. Candace. I am here with Madelaine Golec, who is my guest today and one of our guest speakers on our course, Embracing Rest for an Impactful Life. So I think Madelaine is a super interesting person because she is an owner of a clinic in Toronto, a physiotherapy clinic called Eco Physiotherapy. And she does somatic experiencing. So I love that it's like all this different aspects of working with the body in different ways. So I am curious how you integrate the two. So, you know, physiotherapy and somatic experiencing, what does that look like and why somatic experiencing? Like, what was the journey to get there for you?
Yeah, good question. So I think I'll start with the journey because that will help better understand like the integration piece. So I'm a pelvic floor physiotherapist, and in pelvic floor physiotherapy, we study the biopsychosocial model, or it's one of the aspects. So when we're dealing with pain, specifically pelvic pain, it's never just the pain. There's always some other aspects that are involved when pain persists. And so I was already looking at things like psychoneuroimmunology, like this idea that there are different systems and different things that are working with each other, kind of like an emergent property. I'll say to clients, like, how did the clouds form? Like, it doesn't just form because water's present. You need the right pressure, you need the right wind and moisture, and all of these things come together and something emerges. Similarly with pain. So I do a lot of reading and research related to that. So that's like on the professional side, is like trying to better understand and give a language to my clients to better understand how do they move along this healing journey, like what else they should consider. And then on this other hand is a personal reason where, I'm a clinic owner, I'm a business owner, I'm a practicing clinician, I'm a mother, I have all of these things on my plate. And when I got pregnant and when I had my baby, I said to myself, like, I want to be the best version of myself possible. Like, I had all these things that were like brewing inside of me, but you just kind of go through the motions and then you're like, well, maybe I should kind of work through this. So, I actually went to go see my own pelvic floor physio, and I was just talking about stress, right? Like stress and overwhelm. And she's like, would you like to talk? Like, would you consider chatting with a psychotherapist? And I was like, sure. Funny enough, like my psychotherapist, similar name, similar age, like, it was interesting how the universe brought us together. And she's really the reason that I started looking at somatics, because her psychotherapy practice is like mind, body, spirit. She has a yoga background. And, I went in and I went into therapy and I was like, listen, like I got all these things. Some of them I know, some of them I don't know. Can we find them? And then like, can we get like rid of these aspects? And she's like, does not work that way. And I was like, darn it. Like, can I just go in there and like pick out these parts that I don't like? And so
we'll be happy all the time that way. Just 100% joyful.
And so, she kind of brought in some body based and like really just, what she really did for me? She made it possible for me to feel that like, it's okay. It's okay to feel what I'm feeling. It's okay that there's these parts that, come up and, that you don't like them, but they're protector parts and they serve different roles. And it was just okay. Like, and that actually felt good, just to be like, actually everything's okay. Like, it's okay that it doesn't feel like this or it feels like this. And so she ended up I think she was the one that introduced me to the concept of the polyvagal theory. I'm not my memory is not quite clear about how I got to the polyvagal theory, but nonetheless, I got there, and that really helped me develop a language to speak to my patients. So it was both for me personally, but then it gave me a way to speak to clients about trauma or like the nervous system. And I could give them kind of a picture of like how the physical symptoms and like the receptors, like stretch receptor, compression. So when I squeeze, like compression receptors, and how the brain takes that information, processes it, how the brain then produces this output of a sensation that's unpleasant. And there's the emotional aspect. So I could give them a visual understanding of what they're feeling, what they're thinking, how it impacts the different systems. And I gave them a way to think about how different symptoms that they feel are unrelated are actually quite related via the nervous system, via the brain. So then my psychotherapist had a course on trauma that incorporated the polyvagal theory. Then I had looked up somatic experiencing because Dr. Peter Levine comes up with like once you get into the polyvagal theory and you start going down the like psychology route, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk and like all of the, main names in the field. And so I saw the somatic experiencing, but their website was very confusing initially, and I couldn't really grasp my head around the whole thing. So I kind of like let it go to the side. And then at the time I was doing some mindset coaching, and she's like, your homework for the weekend is to like find the thing and like say yes. And so I actually went back to the website, which they had actually updated, and there it was, like in London, Ontario, starting off, but it's COVID. And on the website, it's like in person, like it has to be in person. So I was like, okay, clearly this is not something that people were ready for. So I emailed them and I said, like, I'd really like to start, but you see this in-person thing, but like it's COVID, like what's happening? And they're like, no, we're switching to online. And it was like 1 month before the course was starting. And I like made the decision right then that I'm going to take it. And it had like filled up because one of my colleagues wanted to do it. And I think she needed to go on a wait list for it but it was like that quick. So I say that was like divine intervention, to make that a possibility. And so in November of this year, so in a couple months, I'm completing the last module, the advanced training, which as body workers, we're all super excited about because this is where we actually incorporate touch. So most of the training has not been related to touch at all. So we thought that in May when we went, we were going to get some, and they gave us a little taste of it at the end. But so I'm really looking forward to the aspect of touch because I'm a body worker. So touch is kind of something that we as physiotherapists do. So it'll be interesting to see specifically somatic experiencing and touch coming in together. Because up until now, I've been kind of finding my own way to integrate these practices, but that also stay within my scope of practice.
Yeah. There's a few things you said there, which I think are really interesting. And I think a lot of women can probably relate is this aspect where we all wear many hats. I mean, most of us are women who work in some capacity. Most of us are maybe mothers or caretakers of some sort, if not mothers. But we all have all of these different roles, and there's this like expectation on ourselves, and maybe depending on, again, our own histories of holding all these balls in the air and being able to do this beautiful, intricate dance without dropping any of them. And I think many of us have this expectation, which is where I think a lot of the stress comes in, and this need to be like, oh, if I could just for a moment or take all these things away. instead of being like, oh, life is messy and it's okay that I feel this way or that way, like you were saying. I think my initial journey into all of this, I went and I started coaching with somebody because I was like, I am broken. I need to fix myself to fit in. And then as I started coaching, I was like, oh, I'm not broken. Maybe this is just not the sphere for me. Like maybe I just am interested in other things or something else is going to work better for me. So it's so interesting that you say that, because I think that's probably in the back of a lot of women's mind, which is so exhausting to be having to be all these things and do it all perfectly and be happy and smiling doing it. It's just not necessarily how it goes realistically. Yeah, so that was one thing I was like, oh, that's, yeah, I think that a lot of us can relate to that.
Well, it's just another ball. It's just another job. Now I need to fix myself, which can make that healing journey also another layer of stress. It's like, oh, am I fixing myself? Am I getting better? And I think the gift that was given to me is like, what would it be like to just relax into what is present here in the moment and just like, yeah.
Yes.
Powerful.
Yeah. Yes. And I see that too in clients where this is like, I'm going to charge forward and healing, damn it. And it's going to happen and I'm going to do the thing. And it's similar, right? It's like, here's this other ball that I'm now going to juggle with all these other things, and I'm going to heal myself. I'm going to do all these things. And it becomes, like you're saying, a job, which is really, doesn't involve the like mindfulness and the self-acceptance and the self-love that can maybe come over time with that sort of thing. Yeah. And seeing those pieces, I think for you as a pelvic physio, for me as a naturopath, there's a lot of it does boil down to, it's not just this one piece. It's like how, what kind of traumas you had, how you were raised, what other stressors are going on, because all of that impacts the whole experience of the health thing going on. Yeah. And as you start to peel those away, like sometimes that's where the magic lies. So you have a thing that you have called Body Intelligence. Tell me a little bit more about that as a concept.
Yeah. So I think it comes from, like, it came from this idea. I was thinking about like emotional intelligence and then, our thinking intelligence. And I came to understand through the polyvagal theory that like our body has a deep intelligence. And also through the work of Thomas Hubel is a big influence in my life as well of late. And, he speaks to like, look at the intelligence of like, what is like when you get really present to your stress, or you get really present to what's happening or to a pattern that you have, it's like, what is the intelligence of that? Because ultimately in the polyvagal theory, what we're talking about is like survival. Like your body and your brain has one mission, and that is to make sure that you are surviving, right? Survive and, pass on DNA, if we break it down to its like simplest of forms. But so when we react a certain way to a certain situation, there's deep intelligence there. And then what also happens is when we react, when our nervous system finally settles, then we go back and we judge how we react. I should have done this. I should have said that. And we kind of lose our connection to that intelligence. Like my body and my subconscious, which is where that intelligence, lies, that part of the nervous system, it's making the best decision based on all of the information it has in that moment. That's why they say hindsight is 20/20, because after the fact, you go back and then you see all this other information, and then you're like, well, I should have done this. But at that time, you didn't have access to all of that information. You only had access to what you had in that moment. And so, recognizing that there is an intelligence. And I mean, if you really think about this, sometimes I sit down and I'm just like, how is this possible? Like, if you cut yourself, right? Like, the intelligence of the body doing the healing process. Like, I'm not involved with that. Like, my job is to look at it, be like, do I need stitches? Is it clean? Let me put a Band-Aid on it. Let me put like an antibiotic cream on it. But like, ultimately, the level of intelligence involved with healing a wound is actually incredible. So that's kind of to give the context. And so what I was also thinking about, like, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, is, and thinking about being a business owner and how hard, because you will be, when you're in a business, like, you are going to be continuously bumping up against limiting beliefs, emotions, like all of your pattern, all of the things are going to be reflected back to you all the time. And so, if you're paying attention, you start to see certain patterns. And then, can we be curious about those? Like, how and why do I react this way? Or why do I have this limiting belief? When we start asking the questions of why, sometimes thinking all of it through, like, I found, like, just kind of talking about it doesn't necessarily help you work through why that showed up in the first place. So the body intelligence piece is, like, first and foremost, if we want to get deeper into our thinking system and deeper into our connection, we use the body as a way of calming the nervous system so that we can become more present in the moment. Because when I am stressed, I'm usually in the future, right? Or I'm in the past, ruminating. Well, that is not actually presence. And so the body cannot be in the future and it cannot be in the past. It is in this moment. So the way I think of it is, like, why don't we go to the body, calm the nervous system down, which then opens up the mind, because we know when we're in a state of stress, we're more in the limbic and, like, the older parts of our brain. As they say, flip the lid, right? So if the outer part is our, like, rational thinking brain, right? If I'm in my reactivity, I don't have access to all of this right now. So if I calm the body and I calm the nervous system, then I slowly begin to bring these different aspects of my thinking online, which opens up my ability, opens up my capacity to see more possibility than the narrow focus. And so that's when I started to, like, consider or play around with this, idea of, there's an innate intelligence in the body. What if we went to the body to find out or to sense into what is the threat? What is the fear? Right? And then how do I come to a place where I can be with that? Like, it's okay that I'm afraid. Like, it's okay. What happens if we stop resisting and we relax the body? And then we can start to ask more questions, because we now have more access, more capacity to ask those questions. What is this fear really about? Where did it come from? Do I sense how old that part of me is that's having this fear and this reaction? And then what is it that I need in this moment that's going to help me move that through? And so we integrate, because when we have a negative experience, not necessarily, we don't need to call it trauma, but negative experiences as well as traumas, and I lost my train of thought. It just went. What I wanted to say is that when we have these experiences, it fragments us. That's what I wanted to say. It fragments us. It means some aspect of our nervous system wasn't able to complete the stress cycle.
Yeah.
And so then it gets stuck. And then we don't like that part. So we fragment from it. We try to fix it or get rid of it or, numb it so we don't feel it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't pay attention to it. And then that keeps us stuck in the stress pattern. That keeps us stuck in the patterns. Like when you keep seeing the same things happening, there's a reason for that, because our subconscious wants to complete the stress cycle. But if we're not present and we cannot calm ourselves to kind of work that through, then we keep experiencing these, I guess, experiences that we would label as possibly negative, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so body intelligence is really just about coming into the body, letting things move through with loving kindness and non-judgment and support. And that's the other piece that's really, really important, is that, there are certain things that we can do alone. And then there are certain things we cannot do alone because of our own self, like our ego will protect us, right? The ego wants to not die. You know what I mean? So when we have relation, we also have containment from another, so that we can go a little bit deeper into, like, we have a little bit of a greater capacity to be outside a little bit of the window of tolerance, a little bit, like pushing the edges. So so relational healing is really, really important when we talk about body intelligence and healing from stress and overwhelm and burnout and, well,
Yes, all those things. And so, do you have, now we were chatting just a few minutes before we came on here. You're guest lecturing on our course. You want to tell the folks a little bit about what you're going to talk about, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah. So really what we're talking about is like embracing rest and embracing presence. And so what I'm going to do is actually, like, we're going to kind of move from body-based practice to reflection, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to connect to our purpose center, to our soul center, to the energy of our life force, right? You don't have to know your purpose. Like, it's not about knowing your purpose or anything, but it's about connecting to the energy of ourselves that wants to find our purpose, right? So there's something that drives us toward doing and existing in life. And so if we can at least tap into that, help us center and calm the body. So we're going to kind of tap into our purpose center. And then I'm going to take people through a series of kind of questions, right? So once we kind of calm the body, get more of the brain online, then we can start asking those deeper questions about self-care and what do I need in this moment and what would support me. And then from there, we'll chat a little bit. I like to use visuals. I like to use metaphors. I like to use different ways to help us, grasp complex concepts, but like in a more simple, like, what is the essence of the message? So we're going to talk a little bit about the river of life or window of tolerance, because that's going to help us understand the purpose of deep rest, the purpose of self-care. Why do we do these things? And so we'll kind of go through that. And then we will just taking a quick look at my notes. Then we're going to go again back into a body-based practice around pleasure, or like, how do we attune or how do we presence ourselves to something pleasant? And what is the experience of pleasant? And then I'll chat a little bit briefly about, but like, what if my stress system is on, or what if I'm feeling a little bit frozen and numb? Like, what do I do when I'm there? So I'll give some suggestions with respect to that. And then again, once we've settled our nervous system and we've gotten a little more present, then I will kind of walk through some questions or some things that you can ask yourself, like, okay, I'm noticing my stress is here, or I'm noticing I'm frozen and numbing and kind of disconnecting. Why is that? What are the questions that I can ask myself that helps me better understand what the
Mhm.
threat is? What is the perceived threat,
Yeah.
right? And then how do I sort of work through that sort of systematically to sort of reach a place of like, okay, okayness, right? I'm
I love
okay.
that. I love that. It's okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
great. There's something, there's like, it's easeful, right? Like I don't have to be always here and I don't have to be way down here. I can just be like, I'm good. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Which is accessible for most people, right? Like
Exactly.
it's not the big mountain. It's like, okay. Um, so for those of you who are watching, and I know lots of people will typically watch later on their own time, we will put in the link for the course below. If we're still in the early bird, so you can still join. And Madelaine, we can put in your information too if anybody wants to contact Madelaine. I think what's the best way to do that? Like, do you have you can email me or whatever your preferred.
Yeah. It's probably through my website
Okay,
is
I'll put
going
the
to
website
be
on
easy.
there. All right. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom. I'm super pumped for your guest lecture. I can't wait to do the exercise. I'm just going to be a participant. I'll let you do what you're saying. It's going to be amazing. I've had the pleasure of having a somatic experiencing journey with Madelaine, and she is amazing. So super pumped to have you on the course. And I look forward to what you're going to present. And again, we'll put all the information in the chat after. And thank you, Madelaine.
You're welcome.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.